When I was younger, my brother and I used to race to finish our chores first. One day I took the harder task, cleaning the backyard, while he took the simpler one, sweeping the porch. But when our parents saw the results, they praised him first. He smiled, soaking in the congratulations. I stayed quiet. Later, he admitted he started choosing tasks based on which one might get more praise, not which one truly needed to be done. That moment stuck with me. It taught me something that the Stoics knew long ago. Praise can distract you from purpose. In this video, we'll explore why Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca warned us to be cautious with praise. Because while applause feels good, it often pulls our focus away from the only thing that truly matters in Stoicism: our reasoned choice, our inner virtue, and our alignment with nature. Praise, when accepted too eagerly, reshapes your motives. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start wondering, "Will they like this?" That's the danger. The Stoic path demands clarity of purpose, not performance for approval. As Marcus Aurelius said, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. In other words, don't build your identity on someone else's claps. Throughout this video, we'll break down 8 Stoic-based reasons why you should resist the temptation of congratulations, and how doing so can sharpen your self-mastery, deepen your character, and quiet the noise of ego. Before we dive in, have you ever done the right thing only to start doing it later for praise instead of principle? Drop your experience in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story and how it shaped your understanding of self-discipline or authenticity. Like, subscribe, and let's walk the Stoic path together, not for the spotlight, but for the strength within. Let's begin. Number 1, praise hooks the ego. Praise has a peculiar power. It hooks the ego with deceptive ease. A single well done can spark a subtle yet potent shift within us. Suddenly, we're aware not just of the task we've accomplished, but of how it was perceived, measured, and valued by someone else. This external recognition can feel good, even affirming. Yet in the philosophy of Stoicism, this very feeling is a signal to be alert. Epictetus taught that the only thing truly within our control is our own reasoned choice, our internal compass. To let that compass be swayed by praise is to surrender sovereignty over the self. It begins so subtly that we hardly notice, yet the consequences are profound. Imagine a young sculptor who carves statues alone in a quiet workshop, guided only by his sense of form and harmony. One day, a wealthy patron sees his work and showers him with praise, calling him a genius. At first, the sculptor smiles modestly and returns to his work, but soon he finds himself wondering what the patron would think of his next piece. He begins altering his creative choices, not out of artistic instinct, but to please the taste of others. Over time, his sculptures change. They are still admired, perhaps more so, but something essential is lost. He no longer sculpts from inner conviction. The voice of the crowd has replaced the whisper of his own soul. This is the bad sight that praise can produce, a person who no longer sees clearly. When we absorb praise too eagerly, we start using it as a mirror. We look into others' words to see ourselves, to find out who we are, to measure our worth. And like a mirror made of water, the reflection is unstable and fleeting. One moment you are seen as admirable, the next moment forgotten or criticized. When identity is tied to such reflections, the ego becomes like a leaf in the wind, tossed and torn by shifting currents of approval and disapproval. The danger lies not in the compliment itself, but in its seductive power to reorient our values. If we are not careful, we become performers on a stage built by others, adapting our lines and gestures for applause. We may start dressing our virtue in costume, doing good not for goodness' sake, but for recognition. The Stoics would say this is to lose the self entirely. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself regularly that fame is meaningless if your soul is corrupted in the process. And once our sense of virtue is tangled with the desire for praise, we begin to seek virtue only in the eyes of others, not within our own hearts. A Stoic's response is not to reject all praise with disdain or false humility. Rather, it is to observe praise with detachment, recognizing it as something external, neither good nor bad in itself. You may hear the praise, but do not absorb it. Do not let it become the ink with which your self-concept is written. Virtue must stand independently, firm like a tree rooted in reason and self-knowledge. The applause of others is like the wind. It may rustle the leaves, but it should not move the trunk. This is the posture of inner freedom, and it is hard-won. Ultimately, the pursuit of praise is a subtle enslavement. It shackles our intentions and distorts our perception of what is right. The praise we receive might be for something trivial or even for something that contradicts our deeper values. If we do not keep watch, we may slowly conform to expectations that are entirely alien to our nature. That is the true danger, not that we are praised, but that we begin to need it. A Stoic knows better. Let others applaud if they must, but never let their clapping replace your conscience. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause, but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Number 2, applause is fleeting. Applause is intoxicating, yet vanishes as quickly as it comes. Today, you may be hailed as brilliant, noble, or visionary. Tomorrow, the same voices may turn cold or critical. Human judgment is a shifting tide, guided less by truth than by momentary emotion, fashion, or rumor. Seneca, with his unflinching clarity, reminds us that those who hinge their lives on public opinion are setting themselves up for endless suffering. They will die 1,000 deaths, each wave of disapproval cutting like a blade to the ego that was once nourished by praise. This is no way to live, for it places the keys to your peace in hands, not your own. There was once a statesman admired widely for his eloquence and leadership. He was the face of hope during uncertain times, praised in newspapers and adored in public squares. Yet when a crisis came and he made a difficult but principled decision, one that angered certain factions, the crowd turned on him. The same voices that once chanted his name now cursed it. Statues raised in his honor were defaced, his legacy debated as though nothing of value had preceded the single controversy. In his silence, he learned a harsh lesson. Applause is not a judgment of virtue, but a reflection of people's moods, and moods are mercurial. This is the bad sight that unfolds when applause becomes the axis around which we spin. You begin to contort your values to maintain favor, shape your speech to avoid dissent, and censor your choices in fear of backlash. You do not live according to your reasoned principles, you live by prediction and performance. It's a kind of slow erosion of the self. You become fragmented, no longer a unified person, but a patchwork of what others want to see. Even your victories feel hollow because they are not yours in essence. They are offerings to a crowd that may not even remember them tomorrow. There is a hidden danger in being celebrated too much. You begin to believe the praise, not just enjoy it or acknowledge it, but truly rely on it. It becomes a kind of fuel. And when that fuel is taken away, what remains? Without the admiration of others, many find themselves lost, unsure of their identity. This is a spiritual instability, a dependency disguised as confidence. Like a building supported by scaffolding, the removal of praise reveals the fragile framework underneath. That fragility is the danger Stoicism warns against, not the applause itself, but the way it can replace your inner judgment if you are not vigilant. Stoic philosophy urges us to fix our gaze inward, to find our value not in how others receive us, but in how we conduct ourselves. Virtue is not a show. It's not subject to trends or popular taste. It is a practice rooted in courage, justice, wisdom, and self-discipline. And unlike applause, which fades and fluctuates, virtue is enduring. To build your peace on reason and alignment with nature is to place your stability on bedrock, not sand. When criticism comes, as it inevitably will, it cannot uproot you, because your self-worth was never built on approval in the first place. The lesson is not to avoid doing good or admirable things. It is to do them regardless of whether anyone notices. Live by principle, not performance. Let applause come if it must, but never chase it. Praise is pleasant, yes, but it should be a passing breeze, not the wind that fills your sails. If you depend on applause to navigate your course, you will be steered by forces outside your control. But if you rely on virtue, you remain the captain of your soul, calm in storms, grounded in calm, and ultimately free. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause, but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Number 3, you owe no performance. There's a quiet pressure that often slips in right after someone says, well done. At first it feels harmless, encouraging even, but under the surface it carries with it a heavy, unspoken demand. Do it again. Not just repeat the action, but repeat the effect, the impression. Applause creates a cycle of expectation, turning once sincere effort into obligation. You become tethered to what people saw in you the last time. And so begins the transformation, not of growth, but of performance. In the Stoic tradition, this is a trap. Stoicism is not meant for an audience. It is not a philosophy of public display, but of private alignment. When you live to fulfill others' expectations, you abandon your own reasoned choice, your prohairesis, the core of Stoic self-governance. There's an old story of a monk who was praised throughout the land for his wisdom and calm demeanor. Pilgrims came from miles away to sit in his presence. At first, he welcomed them, but slowly, without noticing, he began adjusting his posture when people arrived. He spoke a bit more deliberately. He began choosing words that sounded wise rather than words that were true. One evening, after a long day of visitors, the monk sat alone and realized he no longer meditated for clarity, but to maintain the image of being serene. He wept, not from shame, but from the recognition that he had lost his center. This is what happens when performance takes root. We trade the inner path for the outer gaze. And while the world may still applaud, the self quietly erodes. A Stoic owes nothing to spectators. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most publicly visible Stoic of all time, constantly reminded himself that virtue must be practiced for its own sake, not for reputation, not for praise. Don't hanker after what other people say or think. Be your own spectator. The idea is revolutionary. Live as if no one is watching, even when everyone is. Because true integrity is indifferent to applause. When you live to impress others, you become reactive, molded by what pleases them rather than shaped by what aligns with virtue. The curated self is a mask. The cultivated self is a soul refined by honest effort. When we chase congratulations, we begin molding ourselves into mirrors, reflecting what others want to see instead of revealing what is actually there. The danger in performing for others is that you may become successful in it. People may love the image you create. They may celebrate it, elevate it, even build entire expectations around it. And then you become trapped in the role. Deviating from it becomes difficult, not because your values changed, but because the role became your identity. Stoicism calls for freedom, not from responsibility, but from illusion. To act freely is to act without needing approval. It's the ability to walk away from applause without regret, to disappoint expectations without self-betrayal. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be a writer, write. Not perform writing, not pose as a writer. Simply write, because the act is enough. So too with virtue. Act well, not to be seen as good, but because goodness is its own reward. So here's the question. Where in your life are you performing? Where have expectations, whether subtle or overt, begun to shape your actions more than your principles? Take a moment to reflect, and if this message stirs something in you, share it below. Let this be a space where we remember the quiet, sacred work of being true to ourselves. Subscribe for more Stoic meditations that remind us to return to the inner path. Because in a world that rewards performance, the Stoic chooses presence, not to impress, but to embody, not to be seen, but to be. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause, but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Number 4, external praise clouds inner judgment. External praise, though often pleasant, carries with it a subtle and dangerous consequence. It muffles the voice within. When we start giving too much weight to approval from others, we gradually tune out our own judgment. The applause becomes seductive, and its rhythm begins to direct our choices. What should be a quiet, reasoned internal process becomes a performance dictated by outer feedback. The Stoics warn us against this displacement of authority. For if we no longer hear the whisper of conscience over the roar of approval, we risk confusing validation with virtue. Think of a traveler lost in the forest who finds a loud, bustling trail filled with people. The path looks promising. It's well-trodden, energetic, and everyone seems to be moving confidently. The traveler joins the crowd, relieved to be among others. Yet he never stops to ask where the path leads. It isn't until he notices the landscape growing more barren and the people growing more restless that he realizes he has been walking a road not chosen by thought, but by momentum. He let the presence of others distract him from his original sense of direction. Their movement, their noise, their encouragement, all of it led him away from his intended destination. And now he must work twice as hard to find his way back. This is the bad sight, when your internal compass begins to fail, not because you lack one, but because it's been drowned out. You act and people approve. So you repeat the action, not because it is good, but because it was praised. Slowly you begin to trust external feedback more than internal reasoning. You seek applause before principle, popularity before integrity. Your decisions become blurred, not just morally, but emotionally. You feel good not when you've done the right thing, but when you've done the liked thing. And the difference between those two grows harder to see. The danger is that praise can feel like clarity, even when it's not. It gives the illusion of certainty. If they approved, I must have done well. But this is a false measure. Praise is often given for what is impressive, convenient, or familiar, not necessarily what is right. It may reward charisma over character, noise over nuance, charm over courage. The moment you confuse public satisfaction with moral truth, you become vulnerable to manipulation, flattery, and even self-deception. You are no longer anchored in virtue, but drifting in opinion. A Stoic holds fast to a different principle, logos, the rational, universal order. True judgment, in Stoic terms, is the alignment of your will with reason and nature, not with the cheers of a crowd. Epictetus emphasized that only our moral purpose, our prohairesis, truly belongs to us. Everything else, including reputation, is indifferent. So we must be vigilant. Is our peace grounded in inner integrity or inflated by outer affirmation? Are we clear-eyed in our self-assessment or simply echoing the praise we've received? When we live in harmony with reason, Applause becomes background noise, neither sought nor feared. Let praise pass through you like wind through open windows, acknowledged but never clung to. Let the crowd cheer if it must, but never let their cheers guide your steps. The Stoic life is not lived in the echo of admiration, but in the clarity of reason. When your judgment remains your own, you become unshakable. Not because others approve of you, but because you approve of your own actions, with reason as your witness and virtue as your aim. In that quiet certainty lies real strength, the kind that needs no applause to endure. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Number 4, external praise clouds inner judgment. External praise, though often pleasant, carries with it a subtle and dangerous consequence. It muffles the voice within. When we start giving too much weight to approval from others, we gradually tune out our own judgment. The applause becomes seductive, and its rhythm begins to direct our choices. What should be a quiet, reasoned internal process becomes a performance dictated by outer feedback. The Stoics warn us against this displacement of authority, for if we no longer hear the whisper of conscience over the roar of approval, we risk confusing validation with virtue. Think of a traveler lost in the forest who finds a loud, bustling trail filled with people. The path looks promising, it's well-trodden, energetic, and everyone seems to be moving confidently. The traveler joins the crowd, relieved to be among others, yet he never stops to ask where the path leads. It isn't until he notices the landscape growing more barren and the people growing more restless that he realizes he has been walking a road not chosen by thought, but by momentum. He let the presence of others distract him from his original sense of direction. Their movement, their noise, their encouragement, all of it led him away from his intended destination, and now he must work twice as hard to find his way back. This is the bad sight. When your internal compass begins to fail, not because you lack one, but because it's been drowned out. You act and people approve. So you repeat the action, not because it is good, but because it was praised. Slowly you begin to trust external feedback more than internal reasoning. You seek applause before principle, popularity before integrity. Your decisions become blurred, not just morally but emotionally. You feel good not when you've done the right thing, but when you've done the like thing. And the difference between those two grows harder to see. The danger is that praise can feel like clarity, even when it's not. It gives the illusion of certainty. If they approved, I must have done well. But this is a false measure. Praise is often given for what is impressive, convenient, or familiar, not necessarily what is right. It may reward charisma over character, noise over nuance, charm over courage. The moment you confuse public satisfaction with moral truth, you become vulnerable to manipulation, flattery, and even self-deception. You are no longer anchored in virtue, but drifting in opinion. A Stoic holds fast to a different principle: logos, the rational, universal order. True judgment, in Stoic terms, is the alignment of your will with reason and nature, not with the cheers of a crowd. Epictetus emphasized that only our moral purpose, our prohairesis, truly belongs to us. Everything else, including reputation, is indifferent. So we must be vigilant. Is our peace grounded in inner integrity or inflated by outer affirmation? Are we clear-eyed in our self-assessment or simply echoing the praise we've received? When we live in harmony with reason, applause becomes background noise, neither sought nor feared. Let praise pass through you like wind through open windows, acknowledged but never clung to. Let the crowd cheer if it must, but never let their cheers guide your steps. The Stoic life is not lived in the echo of admiration, but in the clarity of reason. When your judgment remains your own, you become unshakable. Not because others approve of you, but because you approve of your own actions, with reason as your witness and virtue as your aim. In that quiet certainty lies real strength, the kind that needs no applause to endure. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause, but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Number 5, it distorts the purpose. There's a question that quietly follows every noble deed. Why did you do it? If you acted with virtue, justice, or courage, was it from principle or from a desire to be seen as virtuous, just, or courageous? This is the razor's edge on which Stoic philosophy balances. The moment we allow praise to seep into our motivation, we risk distorting the very soul of the action. The act may still appear noble on the outside, but within, something essential has shifted. The deed no longer serves the moral law within. It bends to public applause. This is not harmless. It is a slow corruption of purpose. The ancient Stoics, like Epictetus and Cicero, warned that once the motive for right action becomes external, it is no longer truly right. It becomes a performance, not a practice. Think of a candle in a dark room, its flame flickering purely for the sake of light. But imagine someone entering the room and applauding its glow. If the candle could feel pride, it might then burn not to illuminate, but to impress. It might grow brighter in bursts, flare wildly, waste its wax quickly to gain more admiration. It is still giving light, but no longer from essence. It is now burning for the wrong reason. This is what happens when we trade inner virtue for outer validation. The act may still be useful. It may still win admiration, but it no longer originates from a place of integrity. The purpose is no longer the deed. It is the reaction it provokes. The danger here is subtle, but profound. Once you begin doing the right thing because others are watching, or worse, because you crave the congratulations that may follow, you are no longer guided by reason. You are guided by response. In that moment, your freedom begins to erode. You become like a ship without a compass, steering by the cheers of those on shore. Marcus Aurelius warned of this very temptation when he wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The purpose of virtue becomes corrupted when we allow it to bend under the weight of praise. The Stoic walks a narrow road where actions must arise from principle alone, independent of recognition or reward. There is also the matter of identity. When the applause becomes your reason, it slowly becomes your identity as well. You are no longer the person who did the right thing. You are the person who was seen doing it. There is a quiet hunger that praise awakens, a need to repeat the behavior, not because it is just, but because it maintains the image. That image is fragile. It must be fed constantly. It demands performances even when your soul is weary, even when your truth whispers otherwise. Soon you find yourself wearing masks, curating moments, filtering reality so that your purpose, once sacred, is palatable and praiseworthy. And at that point, what have you really become? There's a true story of a monk in ancient Greece who, upon giving food and care to the poor, would leave silently before any could thank him. When asked why, he said, "If they thank me, they may believe I was kind. But if I expect their thanks, I will become someone who only acts kind when eyes are watching." The Stoic path mirrors this discipline. It is not indifference to doing good, but a fierce devotion to doing it for the right reason. Cicero spoke of virtue for its own sake, not because it is profitable, not because it is visible, but because it aligns with nature, reason, and the logos of the universe. That's why the true Stoic performs their duties unseen, uncelebrated, and unbothered. For them, the deed is its own reward. Let this be a mirror for your own actions. Ask yourself, if no one knew you did it, would you still have done it? Would you still speak truth, act justly, love quietly, and sacrifice when no congratulations await? That question is the crucible of integrity, and your answer reveals what truly moves you, virtue or vanity. In a world obsessed with optics, performance, and recognition, the Stoic way is radical. But it is also liberating. You no longer need to chase the spotlight, because the only approval that matters is that of your reasoned self. Do what is right, not because the world sees, but because your soul knows. In that stillness, you find the kind of purpose that cannot be distorted, only lived. Number 6, praise becomes a drug. There is a particular danger in praise that does not arrive with horns or fanfare. It comes softly, like sugar stirred into tea, almost unnoticeable at first. A kind word, a smile of admiration, a pat on the back, all harmless, even uplifting. But over time, when the soul begins to lean on these affirmations for its identity, something shifts. The compliments that once encouraged you now begin to define you. And when you no longer feel them, you begin to crave them. This is when praise transforms into a kind of drug. And like all drugs, the first hit feels innocent. The next becomes necessary. Eventually, you are chasing a feeling instead of living from principle. The Stoics called for self-rule, autarkia, the quiet mastery of one's inner world. But the soul addicted to praise is no longer self-ruled. It becomes a hostage to the applause of others. Consider a simple tale of a village potter known for his fine craft. He began shaping clay as a child, drawn to the silent discipline of his art. People took notice, and soon his pots adorned the houses of merchants and nobles alike. With every compliment, his pride grew. Then came a day when no one mentioned his latest work. Unsettled, he worked harder, adding flourishes, painting the pots brightly, not for function, but for admiration. The village praised again, and he felt relief. Years passed, and the potter no longer shaped clay for love of the craft. He shaped it for the echo of praise. Eventually, his pots lost their soul. They were decorative, impressive even, but not necessary. He had become a servant to his reputation. His hands still moved, but his spirit no longer guided them. The art was lost because the applause had become his compass. This story mirrors what many of us fall into unknowingly. Every time we adjust our behavior to harvest compliments, every time we dress our virtue for display, we lose something sacred. We begin measuring our worth not by our conscience, but by comments. We grow addicted to perception. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Craving praise makes us poor in spirit. It detaches us from our inner dignity and replaces it with the need to be liked. And what happens when the applause fades? What happens when people stop noticing? There is a spiritual crash, a withdrawal. A Stoic resists this vulnerability because their sense of value is rooted not in the world's noise, but in their own unshakable character. There is also a more sinister danger. When praise becomes your fuel, you become easy to manipulate. The world knows how to exploit the praise-hungry. A few well-placed compliments can direct your energy, cloud your judgment, or make you betray yourself in the name of acceptance. A person ruled by praise is easy to control because their peace is not theirs anymore. It belongs to others. The ancient Stoics were fierce defenders of freedom, not just political, but internal. To be free in the Stoic sense is to be unaffected by flattery, untouched by insult, unmoved by public whim. That kind of freedom is not loud, but deeply powerful. It is the strength to act rightly, even if no one sees or claps. It is the quiet courage of someone who lives by principle, not popularity. If you find yourself checking for applause before acting, pause. Ask yourself, would I still do this if no one ever found out? If there was no reward, no recognition, No echo of praise. Would I still choose this path? That's the Stoic test of virtue. The philosopher Epictetus taught that our attention must remain fixed on what is within our control. Our choices, our values, our responses. The opinions of others, no matter how glowing, are not within that domain. They are distractions. They are winds you cannot direct. A wise soul does not set sail with every breeze of praise. Instead, they hold fast to their course, guided by reason, grounded in integrity. So what now? If you feel the pull of praise in your own life, don't panic. You're not alone. Recognition is not inherently wrong, but needing it is dangerous. The Stoic doesn't reject praise out of spite. They simply refuse to depend on it. You can appreciate kind words without being fed by them. You can be acknowledged and still remain anchored. The task is to train your soul to be satisfied with the simple fact of doing what is right. That's your only true reward. So take inventory. Where have you allowed praise to become a crutch? Where has it subtly redirected your focus? Reclaim your discipline. Sharpen your intent. Let your virtue be enough. That is the freedom the Stoics cherished, and it is available to you, quietly, steadily, today. Number 7, it distracts from the work. Praise has a peculiar way of inviting stillness, not the peaceful stillness sought by Stoics, but the kind that breeds complacency. You complete a project, meet a goal, or reach a milestone, and the recognition begins to flow. Compliments, applause, admiration, they feel like a warm blanket after a long journey. And for a moment, you believe you've arrived. But here lies the subtle trap. When we rest in praise, we often stop short of our deeper work. We confuse recognition with completion. Yet as the Stoics would remind us, the true work, the inner work, is never complete. The moment you allow applause to convince you the mission is over, you've already begun to drift from the path of discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not a call to panic, but a sobering reminder. Time is precious and the work is always now. Imagine a blacksmith forging a blade. After days of hammering, heating, and shaping, he steps back to admire the weapon he's crafted. His apprentices marvel at it, praising its edge and form. For a moment, the blacksmith feels pride swell in his chest, but then he remembers the blade is unfinished. It must be tempered, honed, and tested. If he stops now, the weapon will look impressive but lack resilience. Praise, if internalized too early, can dull the steel of your soul the same way. It can make you believe your growth is finished, when in fact it's just beginning. In the same way, a Stoic does not build a life that looks good, but one that is good, grounded in constant refinement and daily courage. Resting in applause is like setting down your hammer before the steel is fully shaped. The result may shine, but it won't endure. The Stoic view of life is that of an ongoing training ground, not a final stage. There is no trophy ceremony at the end of each virtuous act. No audience stands to clap after you resist anger, forgive someone, or hold to your principles. Seneca wrote, "While we teach, we learn." He knew the process was never over. Each day is a rehearsal for death, a practice in how to live and die well. If praise makes you pause for too long, you lose the momentum needed for your own refinement. It places your attention outward, toward what people think of your progress, instead of inward, toward what still needs to be strengthened. And in that space, complacency grows. Applause can be like quicksand disguised as soft ground. It feels affirming, even comforting, but soon it holds you in place. The consequences of resting in praise are often invisible at first. You may continue going through the motions, but something vital has slowed inside. The sharpness of your self-awareness dulls. The urgency of the work fades, and what was once a practice of virtue becomes a performance of consistency. You keep doing the right things, but without the same intensity of presence. This is the cost. You trade your edge for ease. In Stoic terms, you cease to live intentionally. As Epictetus reminds us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If the vision is still alive within you, then the work must continue, regardless of who applauds or whether anyone sees it at all. So here is your invitation. Examine the ways in which praise might be lulling you into stagnation. Has admiration made you pause your deeper practice? Are you still sharpening your inner blade or resting too long on past effort? Reflect on your daily work, your thoughts, actions, and intentions. The Stoic path is not about perfect achievement, but disciplined return. Return to your task. Return to your virtue. Return to the fire that shapes you. If this message speaks to something within you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's hold each other accountable, not to impress, but to persist. Subscribe for more reflections on Stoic growth, integrity, and the lifelong journey inward. Because the Stoic knows the real applause is silent and it happens in the soul. 8. It makes you vulnerable. Perhaps the most subtle and dangerous cost of praise is the vulnerability it leaves behind. In the moment, it feels harmless, even affirming. Someone admires your work, your choices, your words, and you feel lifted. But something exchanges hands without your awareness. Your sense of self begins to root itself, not in your actions, but in their approval. This is the quiet theft of inner sovereignty. When praise becomes the emotional fuel that propels your confidence, then the absence of it can rob you of that same confidence. What is given can be taken, and often is. The applause that once elevated you will eventually fade, or worse, it may turn into silence, skepticism, or scorn. A Stoic is not concerned with gaining praise, not because they despise it, but because they know it cannot be depended on. To build one's peace on the shifting sands of public opinion is to surrender the fortress of the soul. Imagine a young falcon raised in a grand aviary, praised daily by the keepers for its beauty and flight. Every turn of its wings is met with admiration. Over time, the falcon grows attached, not to flight for its own sake, but to the eyes watching, to the claps echoing as it soars. One day the doors are opened, and the falcon is released into the wild. At first it flies with confidence, expecting the same cheers. But there are no keepers, no eyes to applaud. Confused, it falters, unsure if its flight still matters. It forgets how to fly for itself. This falcon was never free. It flew in a cage built of approval, and now, in the open sky, it is lost. This is what happens when we attach our sense of purpose to praise. It conditions us to perform instead of live. Stoicism is the art of strengthening the inner citadel, not to become numb or robotic, but to stand firm regardless of what others think or say. Praise is seductive, but it also creates a dependency that weakens the soul's foundation. If you allow applause to shape your identity, then criticism will dismantle it just as quickly. You become a leaf blown by every gust of opinion. One moment you feel worthy, the next you're in doubt. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, receive without pride, let go without attachment. To be free, we must learn to take praise and criticism the same way, lightly and without emotional investment. A wise person hears them both, filters them through reason, and remains centered either way. But the danger doesn't end with emotional instability. Praise can corrupt. When we become addicted to validation, we may alter our principles just to preserve approval. We soften truths, exaggerate virtues, or avoid necessary conflict, just to stay in good favor. That kind of compromise erodes character over time. A Stoic lives in alignment with nature, not applause. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because truth rarely draws crowds. The path of virtue is often quiet, misunderstood, even ridiculed. If you fear losing praise, you will abandon your path the moment it becomes unpopular. But the Stoic endures, not because they are stubborn, but because they are rooted. The great irony is that those most worthy of praise are often those least concerned with it. Their peace comes from acting rightly, not being seen acting rightly. Their joy is drawn from the act itself, from the discipline of doing what is right, even when no one is looking. They are not cold or disconnected. They feel, but they are not swayed. They hear applause, but are not inflated. They hear silence, but are not discouraged. They understand that walking their path is reward enough. And because they are not vulnerable to external highs, they are resilient in the face of lows. This is strength. This is freedom. Not the brittle confidence that relies on feedback, but the unshakable quiet of someone who knows who they are. So here is your challenge. Examine where in your life you are most vulnerable to praise. Ask yourself, if no one acknowledged this, would I still do it? If no one clapped, would I still walk this road? Your task is not to reject compliments, but to detach your identity from them. You may allow the applause to pass through you like wind through an open window, but you must never hold on to it. Build your peace in the fortress within, not in the echo chamber outside. Practice acting without the need for recognition. Create in silence. Give without expecting thanks. Speak the truth even when it costs you popularity. That is the Stoic path, not a path of cold detachment, but of inner strength, the kind that cannot be broken because it was never borrowed from others to begin with. If you found value on this video, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson in unshakable mindset. Drop a comment below. Do you think accepting congratulations makes you weaker or more dependent on external validation? Let's open up the conversation. In the spirit of Stoicism, remind yourself daily, I do not act for applause but for purpose. Let my character, not praise, define me. What is done well needs no reward. I am the audience of my own integrity. When you live by these affirmations, you take back power from fleeting praise and place it where it belongs, within. Comment your favorite affirmation or create your own inspired by today's message. I'll be responding to the best ones. Thank you for watching.